I would love to introduce to Eric Boduch, co-founder of Pendo. Hey, Eric.
Hey, how are you? It's great to be here.
Great to have you. How are you?
Doing well today. Nice sunny day. I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, so where our headquarters are. It's beautiful out.
Nice. Well, Eric, I look forward to digging deeper into your story. You guys have been doing a lot of cool stuff for the product community in general. And but let's start from the beginning. How did you get started?
Sure. So, I kind of got started on the engineering side, which is interesting, as we'll talk about later. But I've always been interested in computers and software and writing code from the earliest days. Got my engineering degree at Carnegie Mellon, and from there jumped right into software and technology. Did a consulting company that helped pay for pizza during college and other things, and that kind of turned into a little business after school. It morphed into a software company called Cerebellum Software that I started in conjunction with my now CEO of Pendo and co-founder at Pendo, Todd Olson. So we worked together actually right out of college for a little while before we went our separate ways and got back together for Pendo. And then in between that, I did a variety of different roles. So worked from everything from running marketing at software companies, startups, to running marketing at publicly traded tech companies. Oversaw product management at a couple different companies, and did a lot with startups, which pushed me into the entrepreneurship space. Spent a lot of time fundraising, raising money. Got my finance degree, I would say that way. So kind of a breadth of a background, across a variety of different areas. That's really kept life and business interesting for me.
You know how they say that as an entrepreneur, as a product person, you need to fall in love with the problem and not the solution. What is that problem that you are most passionate about?
Well, I mean, right now I'm spending my time with Pendo, right? So it's definitely an area I've been really passionate. When we thought about starting Pendo, Todd and I had gotten back together and we're saying, it'd be great to do another company together. We got Raul Jain involved and later Eric Trone, but we're all talking about what problems we had that pained us. And since we had all four of us actually had a product background, one of the things that came up over and over again was the lack of, platform, lack of tools, lack of technology for product managers. And then that led into, specific areas of the problem, like where we first started, where we first really, talked about pain was how we got analytics from our products. So whenever we built products, it was very difficult to understand how our users were using them, right? You had very subpar solutions to that problem. You could pull engineers and you can have them write, custom code just to, in essence, instrument your product for analytics, but then you're pulling them away from working on your core product offering. Or you could, interview customers and try to understand how they're using it that way, which is good. And you should always interview customers, but it doesn't really give you the best view of usage analytics and how they actually really, truly use it. For a variety of reasons that we won't jump into here. So we wanted to solve this problem. We said, wouldn't it be great if, we could come up with a software solution that gave you all of this usage information about your users of your product without ever having to write code for it, without having to instrument. So that was kind of the original conception behind Pendo. It started with analytics, started with, hey, can you just insert a snippet of code, kind of like you do with Google Analytics, but now for product. And we'd give you all of this data about how your users use your product. And then it grew from there to where we are today, which is a pretty much a broad platform for product managers. We call it, the Pendo Product Cloud. And we think it's all about understanding and guiding the entire product journey, all from a single platform, which we think is extremely powerful. So it's a platform built from the ground up for product managers. And I can dig into that a little farther if you want me to go into details, or, I can step a little bit more into the problem. I don't know. What do you think? Carlos?
Yeah, so I'm saying it's very interesting in your case because you had the team almost before the idea, at least in the Pendo idea. Like before that, you started another company. I think a lot of founders usually struggle with, okay, I have this cool idea. How do I go about it, especially if I don't have a technical background?
Yeah, absolutely. We had a team of people that, especially Todd and I knew we wanted to work together. We got Raul involved and we're like, wouldn't it be great for the three of us to do things together? And from there, kind of the idea got fleshed out. And as the idea was getting fleshed out, that's when we got Eric Trone involved. So 4 of us as co-founders, pretty deep background in product, with this desire that we wanted to do a company together. And really the desire to do something together was kind of the first thing. And then we looked at what problems, do we see out there? What do we want to solve? What do we want to build?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I always think that there's a big overlap between founders and product people, especially at the very beginning of the company, because pretty much your company is your product. And
Yep.
at some point, and so in your case, how do you navigate that? Like there are 4 product people starting the company. How do you divide and conquer?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because one of our first early hires was a product manager too. So think about it that way. I mean, I think when we had 8 people, there's 4 of us who had some background in product. And then we had hired a product manager, an Shannon Bauman, who had worked a couple jobs before at Google and had gone through their APM program, et cetera. So he was one of our early hires. So we had a lot of product people early on. And I think that was good. I mean, Todd was very product focused. He came from running product at Raleigh Software. As our CEO, we all had this, different kind of thoughts to bring to the table about, how we build a platform for product management. And I think having a really strong management team, all of which who had a background in product, is really helpful to us. So even as I took over, in my role turned to the marketing role, and Todd's role turned to the CEO role, and Eric Trone's role turned to engineering, and Raul, did a mix of biz dev, sales, and customer success in the early going, right? As those roles kind of changed, we all still looked at it through a product lens. So I think that brought a lot of strength to how we approach this problem. I mean, it's rare you get a whole founding team that has expertise in one particular domain area. And it was a lot of fun. It was great.
I mean, there's testament to that. And especially because product, I think, is so broad and open, that gives you the possibility to dig deeper into different areas. And if you found the right team that can also feel comfortable becoming experts in different areas as the team grows, that's obviously the dream team. But I'm sure you've learned a lot, especially building a product for product people, which is kind of meta. What are some of those myths and misconceptions that you've seen in product management?
It's interesting. I talk a lot about the evolution of a product manager, having been involved in product management in some way, shape, or form for 20 something years now, off and on, and mostly on. So I've seen a lot change, like you talked about tool sets, right? There's a lot more tools for product managers. There's a lot more education for product managers. I mean, things like product school did not exist 20 years ago. Or if there was, it was, maybe one company doing things like that. Now there's a lot more opportunities for education. There's tools that are built for product managers. There's platforms that are built for product managers. So a lot of that has changed. But when you talk about the myths as things have grown, as product management was kind of increasing in its visibility, Google was one of the big pushers of that, and I think it was great because they raised the visibility and importance of product managers to other people in the tech space, other companies, other thought leaders. And I think all of that was great. At the same time, Google really put an overemphasis, I think, on technical prowess in their product managers, and did a little bit of a disservice there, where I think it's a myth. I mean, I have a computer engineering degree, but frankly, it doesn't affect a lot of my job today. Mostly just my logical thinking kind of process is what I take away from that. But you don't need a technical degree to be a product manager, and you don't need a technical degree to be a product leader or run a product organization. I think a lot of amazing product leaders have come from being generalists, right? I did, on my podcast on Product Love, I always ask people 3 words to describe themselves. And then I've compiled that over time. And so it's interesting to look at what attributes people use to describe themselves. And it's rarely they pick attributes like technical or, strong coders, things like that. They pick soft attributes a lot. The number one thing was empathy, right? The number one thing that they cite is empathy. The number 2 is curiosity, and number 3 was passion. Those are the top 3. And you don't hear technical there, right? You don't hear anything that's kind of close to technical. You don't hear that coding. You don't hear any of those kind of attributes. And those attributes don't necessarily overlap with a similar set of attributes you might think of with really strong coders. And I think coders that are PMs also have a second tendency, which is to go a little too deep into the code. Instead of staying at the problem level, they often dig into kind of the tactical product implementation level. And focus less on the problem. So, I mean, I think that's one of the big myths I've seen as we got into this, is that, there's a lot of focus on hiring product managers that maybe had a software background or a coding background. And I'll maybe argue that, I would argue that generalists often are better product managers than those that come from a technical background, and definitely, should not be thought of as a negative. So I think that's one of the myths that have always sat there. I think that myth is mostly, gone away, but there's still some of that comes up now and again. But if you look at the history of Pendo, now having been around 6+ years, you definitely heard more and more of that at the beginning. And I think that shifted over the last 6 years. And I know I'm a vocal proponent of the fact that product managers don't need to be technical, right? That you can be an exceptional product manager and an exceptional product leader without having a software engineering background or experience in coding.
I agree. And I think part of it is also that the tools out there, the platforms out there are more visual and easier for non-technical people to be self-sufficient. I come from an engineering background as well. And I was also installed in the mentality of, best PMs are software engineers. And I don't think that's the case at all. Obviously, I think that having a technical degree helps to better empathize with engineers, but that's not the only way. The same way we actually get a lot of people from a business background, such as consulting or marketing, saying, hey, do I need an MBA? And we always say, no, you just need to learn how to build better products.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you said, that focus on the problem. I mean, connect with the people who suffer from the problem you're trying to solve. Don't fall in love with your solution, of the solution you have or the one you think you should have. Really try to empathize, with those users and their problems.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big advocate for lifelong learning. I wish I had a product school back in the day when I was starting. And in general, I think it's very important for all of us to stay active. And in your case, I'm very curious. Like, you went from an idea with 3-4 friends all the way to building literally a unicorn in terms of valuation. So how do you learn? How can you able to grow at the same pace as your company?
Yeah, I mean, well, I guess there's a lot of different parts. So there's like the personal learning part, right? Like, what do I like to do and what I like to learn about? And I think, a lot of us who are curious, become lifelong learners. Like, we like to learn different things, whether it's like, I'm trying to pick up stand-up paddle, right? That's my new thing to pick up, which I've never really done before. I'm doing it in the ocean, which means I fall a lot. But that's going to be something over the summer that I'm going to spend some time doing, which I think is, a fun new learning. But more on the business side of things, I've always been a techie at heart. I'm writing a little bit of Python code now, playing around with things. I've never written code for Pendo in my life in the history of the product, and I don't anticipate that they will ever want me to. But I've been writing a little bit of code on the side, dabbling with some stuff. I wrote an iPhone app with my daughter a couple of years ago just for fun. I've been reading more about algorithms, especially around AI, and trying to get, I took a lot of those courses way back in the day at Carnegie Mellon with people like Tom Mitchell and Jaime Carbonell, and Astro Teller was a TA of mine. He's now running, I think is still running Google X. So, I dabble back in that from time to time. I just bought an Oculus. I don't know if anyone has that. It's the coolest thing. I really think it's really cool. I always had this interest in VR, but it always seemed like the tech wasn't there. And now Oculus is really cool. And I haven't even gotten to the gaming side of that yet. I just got it a little while ago, but I'm enthralled by the video and the virtual spaces and their potential. So, I mean, I think there's just a natural enthusiasm and curiosity that keeps me wanting to learn, not just about new things for Pendo. Like, I have a new opportunity now where I'm the GM of the Adopt business unit, which is we're white labeling a product that can be embedded in software products for the purpose of in-application training. So in essence, your customers can build their own training materials on your product that can be geared to the way they use your product, right? So if you're AWS, using Marketo, you could build your own training manuals on how to build landing pages, how to do lead scoring, all of that stuff, and embed it inside the Marketo product, which is really cool. So we're working with ISVs to do that. So that's a new experience to me. I'd never, even though I've been a CEO before and an entrepreneur and owned a number from that standpoint, I've never owned a number from a business unit standpoint. So that's been an interesting opportunity for me to learn, me to, dig back into sales at not at a startup or 6-person company like when we were first selling for Pendo, but now at a 450-person company, right? And putting all of that sales process and reporting and forecasting and work in place to grow that thing, that new business unit, hopefully from something that is really small to something that is as big as Pendo is today. So that's been really fun learning too. So there's always cool things to learn to do. I just, my wife bought me a guitar for Christmas. That's on my list of things to pick up and learn. I haven't gone very far there. I think I can play the opening chords for Wish You Were Here, and that's about it. But I'll carve out some time eventually and hopefully get to the point where I'm not a good guitarist, but I can pass the time a little.
Well, I mean, you can tell, right? Like that passion for learning, that curiosity it's probably what keeps you happy and active. And who knows, sometimes we are able to connect those dots looking backwards and that turns into business ideas. And sometimes it's just something fun. But, back to your question to other guests at the Pendo podcast, Product Love podcast, is curiosity. And I completely resonate with that attribute.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a great attribute for product people to have that curiosity to dig in and say, well, why does something have to be that way? Isn't there a better way to do this? That little kind of itch in your brain, so to speak, indulge that. It might be a new product idea, a new company.
You know how, especially in Silicon Valley, at the startup level, there's a myth that says you have to do things that don't scale at the very beginning to really learn about your customer. And I'm sure that can be applied to different contexts. So in your case, is there anything that you are intentionally doing still today that you know that doesn't scale, but it's so core to your business and to your values that you still want to continue doing?
Personally meeting customers and product people, I mean, it doesn't really scale to spend that personal time, but it's essential. And I think one of the things that product managers tend not to do as they grow and as they have larger teams is they have these layers in between themselves and the customer. And I always think that, the great product leaders probably talk to a customer, even if it's just briefly every single day, whether it's answering a support ticket and being like, hey, what were you doing when this happened to you? Or whether it's, a formal interview, or it's, a customer call or meeting a prospect, whatever it happens to be. I think those types of things, well, they might not scale, they're really essential to do as an individual. And my podcast is another thing that arguably doesn't scale, but love doing it, love giving back to the community, love meeting other people. And it's been more of a passion project than anything else. So those are things I'll continue doing. Talking to customers, talking to prospects, running the podcast, those types of things, love doing them. Think they're really important. We'll continue that.
That's another pattern that I've identified based on other interviews that I had with product leaders. The best ones, they still connected to customers and they find a way to somehow interact with them. I always say that busy people always find a way to do things that they care about, while lazy people always find excuse to do less.
I mean, I think everyone's busy, but what you actually get done are your priorities, right? I mean, you only have a certain amount of time. We all only have a certain amount of time, no matter how little you sleep or how hard you work. It really just comes down to the things that you do are the things that you're prioritizing, either, actively or subconsciously. So if you want to talk to customers, you'll find the time to do it.
Well, now, I mean, you started with 4 product people, you hired a 5th one. Now, how many members of the product team you have, more or less?
Oh, that's a question I'm not sure I even know the answer to. I think, in that org as a whole, we're in the 20s.
Okay. So there are already a lot of smart product people shaping the vision and trying to.
Yeah, from design to product to, absolutely. Product management. We have a product ops group, all rolling up under our chief product officer.
So obviously, as a founder, as a product person, you have strong opinions about the vision of your company, especially the business unit that you are running. But you also hired a bunch of smart people to help with that roadmap and that vision. So how do you balance the influence that you personally have with the influence that you want your team to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to hire smart people and empower them to do their job. I mean, our CEO is probably the person with the strongest product background among all of the founders, right? Who had been doing product and mostly all product and a little mix of engineering his whole life, right? And it was more of a challenge, I'm sure, for him than the rest of us to balance it out, right? But as a CEO, he had a lot of other responsibilities, and he had to think like, what can I do that no one else can do, and focus on those types of things. And it's the same thing for all of us. As I was running marketing in the early days, I would have my influence and my comments on product and product direction, especially based upon what response we got to our marketing materials, and from me talking to customers or going to events and trade shows and working with product leaders. But at the same time, I had the marketing focus to rely on, or to make sure that we excelled at. Similarly today with Adopt, getting that up off the ground, and getting that rolling. We're getting lots of traction. Need to focus on that. But yeah, we all look at the product and figure out, and provide feedback into the direction we go. But then we empower our product teams, to drive that. I guess when you look at it today with Adopt, I have now this like little product again, right? Where that I have, some influence and control of, along with the product team. So we really work together to talk about, the vision of the product and where it's going. And I personally think when you get product managers, engineers, designers, and the business side of the house together working on product direction and roadmap, you get the best results because they can bring in different perspectives. You can brainstorm on different things. You can drive a product effectively, after a market that way. But I definitely am a fan of collaborative approaches.
One of the things that we've seen in the industry and is that there is much more technology out there for product people, and obviously Pendo is a big player in that. You actually took a very interesting approach as a platform instead of just focusing on one particular vertical. In general, what do you think are best practices for product people out there to try to get the most out of a product platform such as Pendo?
Yeah. And in the Pendo's case, we're always built for product teams. So, and we're all product people or have some background in product. So I think we had a very unique viewpoint. Like, we were in technology, it started out like we're doing, analytics for marketing teams and pivoted over to product. We were always geared to the product people, and we always had the product background, and we've always built our thought leadership around product, and we've always given back to that community. So I think, our perspective there has been a little bit different, but I think the important thing, when you're talking about how to get the most out of a product like Pendo, is that you go into there and think about the problems you're trying to solve. And think about it from that business perspective first. I know when I go in and talk to prospects, it tends to be very oriented like, what are your big initiatives? What are you trying to do? What's going to make this big impact on your business? Is it, improving your onboarding? Is it increasing your trial conversions? Or are you working on building a better product roadmap? Are you thinking about how you can better allocate resources? Are you launching a new product? You need to, think about how to do that. And then you think about, okay, what data and what in-application communications can help, or what feedback do I need, or how do I integrate NPS? Then you start thinking about how the platform facilitates success in these different projects. And then these things just aggregate on top of each other. And, the technology becomes part of your everyday, your everyday job, how you get things done. But I think it's important that you think about, the problem first. Then you talk about how like the technology can help you solve the problem. You get the data, that gets you there. You design the experiments, you get the results, and then you iterate. So you keep moving towards that solution, whether it's say, we want to get trial conversions up, or whether it's we want to improve onboarding. I do think it's about thinking about that problem first, and then figuring out how technologies like Pendo can help you solve that problem or improve your company in these different ways.
And what are other tools that are part of your product stack?
Yeah, so we use quite a few. Obviously, we use Pendo for analytics, for NPS, for communications, for feedback and roadmap. But there's quite a bit of other products we use. We use Miro for collaboration, visualization. We use Figma on the design side. We use Jira, Atlassian. We use Google Docs as a repository in a lot of cases for documentation. We use Looker to aggregate data from our product, like usage data and other data, and combine it with data from other systems and use it for things like executive dashboards. And then we use a full story, doing some work with session replay. So I think that covers probably most of it. I wrote down a list here. Yeah, I think I got it.
It's quite a big list, and I'm so happy to hear that, because back in the day it was all about PowerPoint, spreadsheets, and us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The tool sets we have for product managers are so much better. We're not like, hey, we have Microsoft Project, Excel, and Word. There you go. There's our product stack.
So just to wrap it up, I want to talk about the future with you. What are your thoughts on the future in the product management industry?
You know, I saw this question. You're like, where's the opportunity for product managers? And I'm a big fan of like, what's great about product is building things, right? There's a huge opportunity to build. There's so many things. And, you know, we've gone through some horrible events recently that have played out. And I think they're catalysts for change that should have happened already. But there's opportunities you have to build to fix things like healthcare, education, transportation, manufacturing. There's so many things out there that should be, and frankly, need to be better. I could go on and on. And so as a product person, I'm a big believer that we can fix a lot of our problems by building. So let's go out there as product people and let's build solutions to our product, you know, to our problems. Mark Andreessen just wrote something that was phenomenal, a great piece, you know, touched on some of the same thoughts. And I think it's entitled, "It's Time to Build." And I think every entrepreneur or product person out there should read that.
Ditto. Let's do it. It's been great to have you on the show, Eric. Thank you so much for your unscalable time. Is there
Thank you, Carlos.
You would like to add?
No, this has been awesome. Greatly enjoyed it. Always love to chat about product and where things are going. Gets the juices flowing.
All right. Well, thank you. Bye.